Peace and love, family. How is everyone doing tonight? Thank you for joining us on another edition of the RAM Book Club, Resurgence of the African Mind, where we seek to liberate African minds by reading one unit of work at a time. Family, as you know, we are reading The Blueprint for Black Power, going through it, getting through it, family. We are on chapter 25. My name is Lily La Poete Speaks, also Alima Njai. Family, in order to get the links to join the panel or to listen out, you have to go to lilylapoetespeaks.com, click on the tab Blueprint for Black Power, scroll down and choose the appropriate link. As I stated, we are on chapter 25. This week, we're talking about the Black consumer and the economics of, no, that was last week. Hold on, I'm sorry, family. The relationship of white-owned banks to the Black community, family. Last week, we talked about the Black consumer and the economics of Afrocentrism. This week, we are going to talk about banks, and specifically, we're going to talk about the relationship to the Black bank. The Black family. I'm sorry, the Black people in the Black bank. I'm sorry, I'm just a mess today, family. But peace and love. We're going to let the panel introduce themselves. Dr. Maat is eating away.
Okay, but I'm here, sis.
What you eating, girl?
No, I was eating some spinach and some dumplings, sis. But let me put my stuff aside. But you forgot to mention that you are the author of Perceptions of a.
I was trying to get around to it, but I was getting so tongue-tied. So I said, well, let me just pass the mic.
Yeah, let them know, sis, where to find this manuscript.
Of course, family, you can also find Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 1, authored by me. Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 2 is coming out soon, family. It's going to be Reflections of a Misplaced African. But you can find Perceptions of a Misplaced African also at lilylapoetespeaks.com in our marketplace, family. You can also find Aaron Knows About Africa by Naomi Bradley and Brother Benjamin Njai, also the Black Panther. Check out his site, blackpanther.com. There's good articles there, family. Also, more things to purchase. You can also go to pantherwear.com. Check out some things, some shoes, get you some hoodies, whatever you would like, family.
Yes, let me.
Also, if you like a digital download copy, you can get your digital download copy of Perceptions of a Misplaced African from Amazon.com on your favorite electronic device.
Cool. I wanted to flash the Pantherways to them so they can see it, sis. So we're not just asking you to buy products for the sake of buying products, right? We have them. And I always keep my shoes in the box, by the way.
I have to get a new pair because, like I said, I gave mine to Delia because they were too small.
So you got to get another pair. I'm getting ready to buy
Abju Wear, family.
Yes.
Some eyes holding up the Abju Wear. Go check out the Abju Wear, family. Check that out. Get something to gas. Get something to gas. We have plenty of different options out here, family.
Yes.
Those are nice.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We gotta support ourselves. We also have this. I'm happy to announce that now, I say Energize who, door sell who. Now we have Tubman batteries. Look at this. When I got this, I started screaming on Friday. We have our own batteries at this point. Look at this. Tubman. It says we cannot stop now. Okay. Superior charger for AA batteries. So we have our own battery. It's like Sister Alima, I just feel like it's getting to the point where if you don't want to support Black, it's a choice at this point. We just can't keep saying, oh, there's no Black on. No,
we have a lot of options. I mean, family, look, like follow the system. I got the toothbrushes. I heard that there's a toothbrush company, a toothpaste company. I'm trying to get more information on that. Like, family, we doing it big out here. Like in 2018, like we rolling it out. You can follow different pages like WeBuyBlack.com. I think it's 360 Black or something like that, or 365 Black or something like that on Instagram. It's a lot of different pages that you can follow, and they promote just straight Black products. And it's a lot of stuff I didn't know. I've been ordering stuff like crazy, but I'm just talking about that toothpaste. But like, we doing it up, family.
Yes, same here. And I know you and I, you know how we are, Sister Lima. We're hard critics on our people.
I order my toothbrushes as well. Like we really got to support each other. I need to order my batteries today. I'm about to do that right now while we're on the live stream. But we got to do it, family.
We got batteries, sis. We have detergent. We have our own laundry detergent at this point. We have our own toilet paper and paper towels that you can get from freedompaper.com. I mean, like you said, sis, it's at a point where if you don't want to support, Black owned and operated businesses, it's not because we can't supply your needs. It's because you just don't. It's either you don't know about them or you don't want to, right? So it's one or the other, because they're definitely, our brothers and sisters are definitely producing goods and services that fulfill our needs and our wants. We also have, sis, Meltrek. Okay, so we have our own animated films. So we have Meltrek. If you go to Google and just type in Meltrek, it'll take you directly to edanimateproductions.com or maybe YouTube to check it out. But we have our own films, and not only is Meltrek offered in DVD format, but it's also offered as a digital download on edanimateproductions.com. So we have our own films, and I'm happy to announce that we're partnering with Kid Positive, the producer of Tell Me Who I Am. And so he's also selling Meltrek. I know that Meltrek is also being sold on LiliLaPoeteSpeaks.com. And so he's selling it to you, and we'll be selling Tell Me Who I Am on our platform. So, I mean, talk about cooperative economics. We're living it, sis. We're living it. All right. Yes, we're living it. We also have coloring books, okay? Coloring books. And we have Meltrek Exploring Ancient Africa Storybook. I love this storybook, sis. Oh my God. I'm trying to go like this so you can see this beautiful book. I gotta mail the babies a copy, Sister Alina. Gotta mail the babies a copy.
Yes, we need a copy of that, sis.
Yeah, I think you would love it. You and Ben would love it. So go to the website, family. Get your copies. Get your copies of the books, the coloring book, the storybook, and the film. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic. I don't even think I said my name. So for those who don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Deanna Bailey. I named myself Dr. Maat, but that name will be changing soon, okay? That name will be changing soon. It's kind of crazy, sis, that I branded myself, didn't know what I was doing, and went out there and branded myself, and then found out that, wait a minute, that's not what I should have been doing. So, yep, so people know me as Dr. Maat, but that will be changing soon. Legal name Dr. Deanna Bailey. I am the co-founder of Ed Animate Productions, the executive producer of Meltrek. I'm also an adjunct professor for the School of Engineering at Morgan State University. And I offered a full-time position starting in the fall. So I may be there full-time. So background is electrical engineering, PhD is in engineering, with a concentration in language recognition and signal processing. I'm going to pass the mic.
All right. As everybody knows, I am Chaos here, and today I'm on the platform title Watchdog Entertainment. Newest thing on the YouTube thing. Be on the lookout for my friend Mr. Roland here at radio station. Yep. So his radio station be on every Sunday.
Pretty much every Sunday, yeah.
Yeah. So you know how it goes. And always, if anybody wanted to share links or join any conversation, they can go to Intellectual Warfare Group on Facebook. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Brother Travis. Is Brother Travis on? I thought I saw him come in and then go out. Is Brother Travis still on? Let me see. Who is this? Oh, that's nobody. So I think Brother Travis came on and then he got out of there. He got out of there. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and start. He got in and then he dropped out. So hopefully he'll be able to join us again. As Sister Alima stated, she stated that today we will be starting with chapter 25, the relationship of white-owned banks to the Black community. And before I even got into the chapter, I suspected that Dr. Amos Wilson was going to demonstrate how Black folks, how we get little or no return on our Black dollars. So, for example, we put our money in these institutions, and these institutions, they take our money, and of course they go and invest it, and they make money off of our money. But yet they don't give us. Yet we receive little or no return on that money that we deposit in the bank. And what I mean by little to no return, I'm talking about when we go to apply for a mortgage, or for a personal loan or a business loan, it's highly granted. So even though this banking or this financial institution may be located in a predominantly Black neighborhood and receive most of its deposits from Black people, they lend the lead to Black people. And so I kind of suspected that, sis, even before I read the chapter, because remember in chapter 24, there's a section on page 604 entitled Little or No Return on the Black Dollar. And Dr. Amos Wilson, he says, look, what do Black consumers get in return for their exceedingly generous? He asks this question: what do we get in return for our exceedingly generous, consistently loyal support of white and other non-Black owned businesses? Right? So he talks about this throughout the chapter. So I figured when I read this title, that he was going to also, and in this particular chapter, let me backtrack. So in chapter 24, he was talking about, convenience stores that are located in our neighborhoods. He talked about supermarkets. He talked about clothing industry, the liquor industry. He was saying how, these industries make billions and billions of dollars off of Black consumers, but yet they don't invest in economic development of the communities of Black consumers. And so I think in chapter 24, he was going to say that the same situation lies with white-owned banks. And so I'm looking forward to this discussion, sis. So let's go ahead and get it popping.
All right, chapter 25. Banks rob customers. Page 657 is where we are, family. Baba kicks it off, starts talking about domination. He says that the essence of domination is that the dominant benefits at the expense of the dominated. Domination is an uneven exchange. Unlike an honest or fair trade relationship, it does not involve equally beneficial reciprocity, an exchange of things of equal value. The dominated are forced to finance their own domination. He goes over to say, however, it is complexly subtle to the point of invisibility when oppression and domination are conventionally renamed freedom and democracy, as is the case with the current oppression and domination of Black people by white people in the United States of America. Under such a deceptive regime, the dominated are made to feel freest when they are most exploited. They voluntarily choose their shackles. They freely spend their monies in the ways that just happen to enrich those who dominate them.
And see, I feel like I watched a little bit of that debate with Tariq Nasheed and Gerard Taylor.
Oh, Lord.
Pronounce his name correctly. I watched it, I'm like 30 or 40 minutes in. And Tariq Nasheed was doing a lot of quoting from Dr. Neely Fuller's book. But what Tariq Nasheed should have done was read Blueprint for Black Power, because the guy, Gerard Taylor was trying to argue. You know what? I'm about to get into the whole debate, sis.
I know. Don't even do it.
What I'm going to say is that when you read that paragraph, I immediately thought about Tariq Nasheed.
And I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I'm not even, you're right. So I'm going to go there without getting into the debate.
All right, going on 658. Baba started talking about how we voluntarily enrich those who despise us. And of course, we know that's true, family. We know that's a true fact. We enrich those who we know for a fact do not particularly care for us. But if they offer a particular brand or service that we enjoy, then we just deal with it. And we've been doing that for a long time. Baba starts talking about here numerous studies. He talks about a study in 91 and 92, and they repeatedly demonstrated that white-owned leading institutions where Black Americans have on deposits billions of dollars reject Black mortgage applicants more than twice as often as white and Asian. These studies also demonstrate that the bias in leading is primarily a function of race and not income. Because, of course, they'll be quick to say that we can't necessarily afford a loan, but in a lot of instances, that's not the case. It's more so based on race, as Baba states here. He goes to say that a lot of the reasons that loans are rejected is based on redlining. And redlining is the refusal by lending institutions to extend credit to residents and businesses who live or are located in specific areas, regardless of qualification. And we know that's the reason why a lot of laws were enacted, because of redlining, and they're not allowing certain people to be able to get loans based off of where they saw that they lived.
Absolutely, sis. And I just want to add to what you just said. Bank of America, did you hear that they are currently being sued?
They are being sued. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it says that I think it was like for $2.2 million. I think it was like for $2.2 million.
Did you
they're being,
why are they being sued though? Because that's all I heard is that they're being sued.
Yes, here it is. It's alleged. Okay, so they were being sued. It happened in, I believe, North Carolina. Don't quote me though. I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
It says Bank of America, class action suit. Oh my gosh, Bank of America always in the media. The lawsuit alleged that the bank was using rubber stamp. No. This was discrimination against Black people. Hold on. Let me find this. I'm going to find it. You go ahead and continue.
Okay, so continuing on, family. They go down in the middle of 658. We start talking about the Acorn Survey. It says the Acorn Survey showed that across the nation, 33.9% of Black applicants for conventional and government-backed mortgage loans are rejected by lenders, compared to 15% of whites, 12% of Asians, and 24.9% of Hispanics. Of course, family, we know that these statistics may be a little bit different, but of course, the sentiment still remains the same within the housing industry. In certain areas, it's much easier, but in certain areas, it's definitely still the stigma when it comes to trying to get loans and things like that. Okay, anybody else have anything on 659? 658, sis?
No, I don't have anything. You covered it. The redlining, you defined what it was, and how they, how they basically discriminate against minority communities. Yeah, you already said that. I don't have anything else on that particular page.
Okay, on to 659, family. Washington, August 12th. We're talking about a computer study here. And the computer study matches loans in neighborhood provides strong evidence that many of the nation's major mortgage lenders fail to serve minority areas. It says the computerized nationwide study by the Nader Group, Essentially Information Inc., suggested that 49 mortgage lenders in the 16 big cities engaged in racial redlining, a practice in which banks, as we know, like we said, banks and other lenders avoid making loans depending on where you live. So they found that 49 mortgage lenders in 16 cities. They also found evidence of 62 incidences, family, of race-based lending in violation of federal fair lending laws. And this was back in the 90s. So, nothing changes but the year. Study covers 1 year. They did more studies here, family. 1990 and 1991, they used color-coded maps to highlight redlining hotspots around the country. And it showed 1.25 million mortgage loan applicants here in this study. Once again, family, just shows what they're talking about, redlining. We go further down into the middle of the page. Under the federal law known as the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, lenders are required to provide information on all mortgage applications, including the incomes of applicants, their race and ethnic background, and the amount they sought to borrow. The report comes just 2 months after the comptroller of the currency vowed to use undercover agents to test whether mortgage lenders are illegally discriminating among borrowers. Mortgage companies are responsible for 2/3 of the 62 lending patterns cited in the study.
I can't find this. Let me get back into it. I'm looking for this article.
Can't find it? Okay.
Yeah, it's Brother T posted it on his page, and it says, oh my goodness, I've been looking for it. I can't find it.
All right.
Yeah, I wanted to put in something out there and then not be able to give someone a reference for it. Okay, here it is. It says Bank of America discriminated against Blacks, must pay $2.2 million. It was in the New York Daily News.com.
Oh, wow.
No, let me go to Google and type in the title. Bank of
As we can see, even still until today, we're still having issues of discrimination to where cases are still being solved. People are being awarded monies and things of that nature because of discrimination with banks.
Okay, now this is an article, but like you said, even though this book was published in 1998, there was an article published in the New York Daily.com. I can show it to the family really fast so we can continue. But there is an article. Yep, right. So this was an article that Brother Flora, that he posted. Bank of America is to pay $2.2 million for 1,000 Black job seekers it discriminated against. So Bank of America, they're notorious for, and I mean, if you just even type in Bank of America lawsuit, they're always getting sued for something. They're always getting sued, whether it's for jobs, they discriminate against Blacks for jobs, mortgages, loans. It's
always something with them.
Absolutely. So I don't even understand at this point why Black folks don't understand. Like, what don't we get? Like, you got folks that are clearly saying, look, we don't want to be bothered with you, right? We don't want to be bothered with you. They took a lot of businesses out of the community. You have white entrepreneurs saying, look, I didn't make my clothes for Black women to fit. I didn't make my clothes for you. So I'm trying to figure out what would be the impetus to then say, you know what, let me put my money in a Black-owned bank, or let me start buying Black-owned products. Like, I don't understand, sis. I'm really starting to believe, not that I disbelieve, but, Dr. Cambon, who's a renowned Black psychologist, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Naeem Akbar, all of them said that we have mental problems. And I can see it has to be a mental problem. He said that we have mental and personality disorders. And I am convinced that we do. Anytime we continue to give people money who don't respect us, continue to give people our money who abuse us, give people our money who don't invest back in our community. It has to be a mental problem at this point.
Dr. Ma, you mentioned about the banks. One question I ask: how many Black banks are in existence right now in the United States?
I believe 20. I believe 23. The last. Harbor Bank. Also, I can show you. See, I put my money with my mouth is Jay.
Because I have a list of Black banks in my notes. I have to find it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna flash. I'm gonna cover up my card number. But there's a bank. Yes, I think Sister Alima actually you posted that a while ago, sis.
Yeah, the list. I think it's somewhere in my notes.
Yeah, you posted a list of Black-owned banks, and I believe the number was about 20-something, right? 20-something Black-owned banks.
I think the most popular one that was saved before they were going to close down was one in Chicago, and I think people from Ghana partnering with some people in Chicago to save that bank in Chicago. Last time I heard. Wrong.
This list that I have 38 on this list, but it's more than 38, but it's 38 on this particular list.
Okay, so 38 banks. Okay. Yeah, so we have Harbor Bank, and I know down in Atlanta, there's a popular Black-owned bank. I forgot the name of it.
I know they got Citizens Bank up the street.
So look, I'm gonna show this. And cover up my card number, of course. So I bank Black. I don't know if you can. Oops. Let me do it like this. So you can see Harbor Bank. This is my business card.
Okay.
And then this is my personal account right here. Harbor Bank, Black-owned bank. I don't bank with Bank of America, used to, but no longer, no Wells Fargo, used to. Mm-hmm. No MSC, used to. Black-owned banks. Black-owned banks. So we got to start putting our money where our mouths are.
Yeah. It's very neat now, especially with these interest fees and all. They raise atrocious these fees now from the banks now.
I mean, even with Black-owned banks, I mean, you still have fees. It's not like if you go to a Black-owned bank that you escape, fees. But,
no, that's fine. The black
yeah.
bank's fine, but going to these banks that we don't control and they charge like a bunch of fees, yeah, that's a problem. I don't mind the black banks because it's needed because there's not many black banks across the United States.
Absolutely, and then it's just not simply about banking black. It's about banking black and then coming up with a collective agenda or a plan for community development. You get what I'm saying? Like pooling your money together and saying, okay, look, last year this community put $100 million in your black-owned bank, and we had a project we would like for you guys to fund. You get what I'm saying? So not just simply putting your money in the bank, or putting your money in the bank and then going to them with an agenda saying, look, we put X amount of dollars in your bank, and we need you to give out, a certain, will give out a certain number or grant a certain number of loans, to some of the people in this community. Stuff like that. That's the stuff that we need to be doing.
That's right, sis.
Also holding these institutions accountable.
That's right. Not just taking people's money, but you got to do things. It's a give and take. Absolutely. What do you think I saw pointing at lending bias against black-owned businesses?
Lending bias against black-owned businesses. That's on page 660. Yeah. Okay, so on page 660, Dr. Amos Wilson provides us with a chart, table 25-1. If you do not have the book, you can rewind this talk and just pause it and take a look at it. But he provides us with a table that shows us the number of the percentage of white applicants that receive bank loans as opposed to the percentage of black applicants that receive bank loans. And he said, according to one study, all right, now this was a study that was conducted in 1988. It was a study of 10,139 small businesses in 28 U.S. cities by Timothy Bates, who was a director of the urban policy analyst at the New School of Social Research in New York. He says, according to one study, black-owned firms are turned down for bank loans more often than white-owned firms. And when I first read this book, Sister Alima, I thought, is it because of, credit? Is it because, I try to be as objective as possible, since I don't like saying everything is racial. I don't want to be that type of person, right? That everything is racial. So I was wondering, I'm like, okay, what was the profile of these black-owned firms? Was it a credit issue? Was it, a collateral issue? Just trying to figure out what it was. But he says that black-owned firms are turned down for bank loans more often than white-owned firms. Moreover, the loans they receive, particularly in poor inner city neighborhoods, are smaller. So he says white-owned firms, percentage of white applicants that receive bank loans, it says 32%. Average loan was $51,630. Average loan for borrowers in low-income urban areas was $62,098. Black-owned firms, it says the percentage of applicants that receive bank loans was 25%, all right, which was 7% less than the white applicants who received bank loans. It says average loan was $20,000. So we're talking about that's less than half of what that's less than half of the average loan of white applicants. So this was $20,604. Average loan for borrowers in low income areas was $28,324. All right. So Dr. Amos Wilson answers this question, because initially when I looked at this chart, I said, well, wait a minute. I'm wondering, what was the portfolio, or the profile of these, black-owned firms that were turned down. So then he goes on to say that racial bias in lending occurs even when the success of a black-owned company is clearly demonstrable or demonstrate. I don't like to say demonstrable, demonstrable in terms of years in business, healthy product profit margins and growth rates, high cash flow, and very adequate collateral and high caliber management. All right. Of this, which was published in the Wall Street Journal in 1993. It was a company called the District Scientific Medical Supply. They were located in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and the owner, George Fountain, was also a petroleum dealer. And it says that this man had received his annual sales were roughly $1.1 million. But even though his sales were $1.1 million, banks routinely rejected his request for inventory financing. Okay. He says that, and it says banks won't even accept signed government contracts as collateral. This is what George Fountain complained about, okay? And he was saying that they sell to Fortune 500 companies. He's a petroleum dealer. You know, they're projecting sales, you know, in the amount of $2 million for the next year, but yet they were routinely turned down for loans, okay? He goes on now, Dr. Amos Wilson also goes on to provide us with another example of a Black entrepreneur, Arthur B. Scott, who owns a management services corporation in Oakland, California. It says that he had $4.5 million in annual sales. And but yet when he left this federal program that awarded contracts to minority-owned firms, that cost him half of his business. So he went to the bank and said, look, can I borrow $250,000? And they told him no, despite the fact that they gave this man a $1.8 million credit line. He said, look, I just need $250,000. And they said no. So Dr. Amos Wilson, in these couple of pages 660 to 661, he's demonstrating that even though you may be a Black owned and operated business that is extremely successful, banks won't finance you. All right, so moving on to page 662, he says that even when required by U.S. law to lend in all areas from which they accept deposits, white-owned banks generally have steadfastly and stubbornly refused to do so, or have, oh, hold up, before I even go there, sis, I want to bring up this. So I want to bring up this point. He says that these examples can be multiplied manyfold in light of the racial bias against lending to well-established Black-owned businesses. It can be well imagined that startup Black entrepreneurs will have an extremely small chance of obtaining finance in any from white-owned banks, right? And it says the rejection rates of Black-owned businesses and would-be businesses have been so long-standing and consistently frequent that many Blacks have given up shopping for capital, and many more dare not even make the first attempts. In this way, Blacks have literally been conditioned by white-controlled financial establishment to avoid entrepreneurial undertakings or to undertake only small, marginal, undercapitalized, high-risk, often legal business ventures. The white-owned financial establishment, through racially biased lending practices, through redlining and other detrimental lending practices, have virtually declared war on the economic development and prosperity of the African-American community. So I thought that was very important, Sister Alima, because, you know, you and I are both business owners, and people ask me, Doc, why haven't you, they know how much Meltrek costs. You know, it's no secret. You know, we're outsourcing the animation portion of the episode. Okay, so 90% of it is done in-house, but we don't code in Adobe Flash, so we outsource that portion to some animators in the Philippines. I'm currently talking with some brothers and sisters on the continent now because I'm looking at some of their work. I'm just waiting to find one that can actually draw out characters, because every artist has different like penmanship or pen strokes or whatever. And so I'm looking for some folks on the continent now that we could outsource that work to. But anyway, so it's no secret, if you want 24 frames per second of animation, you're looking at spending about $1,000 per minute. So if Meltrek episode 1 is 21 minutes, you can imagine how much money we spent just on animation. This doesn't include studio time, voiceovers, storyboarding, trailers, promotions. That's just on animation, sis. So a lot of brothers and sisters say, well, Doc, won't you try to go to a bank and get them to fund it? But I was one of those Black entrepreneurs that heard about the rejection, sis, so much that I said, you know what? I'm just going to wait until my credit score is where it's supposed to be, wait until I get some more collateral, and then step to these banks. But even then, I'm still apprehensive about going to these banks and getting a loan, because I'm reading cases about people who get millions of dollars in sales and they still get rejected. So it's extremely discouraging for people like myself who don't have, millions of dollars in revenue to even want to go to these banks and ask for a loan, sis. So I completely can empathize with these other Black entrepreneurs who are discouraged about going to these white-controlled financial establishments to get funding for their companies. But anyway,
Yeah, and you know, it's that's one of the challenges most of our people face. That even now, when some people say entrepreneurship, that you know, it's really not embedded in the culture as people. And let's say if it is, these are the hurdles that our people face in regards to taking that entrepreneurial route. I know that this is going to be work, and it's warfare, because when you're doing entrepreneurship and you're competing, you gotta be ready for anything, psychological. All forms of warfare, because you can compete with the other best that's been in existence for 50 or more years.
Absolutely.
Now you have a question? I'm rolling.
Oh yeah. Actually, I was listening to the great doctor explaining what Amos was talking about in the book. As far as my understanding, Amos is giving a consensus, a study of what take place at a certain time, and we could look at it into this time to see what changes. But what we're not understanding is there is a resource out there that we need to get involved in. And by looking at the work of Amos, because Amos is saying, listen, we look and we see there is a wide power structure going on, and it's an organization, period. All right? We are not organized. We keep saying, oh, black businesses. I don't know how these people think. You see what I'm saying? Because yeah, it's a black business, but sometimes they're not moving collective. They're not linking together to say, okay, here we are, we're struggling, we need to link, and we need to, you know, be one power and see how we can, you know, get what we want from the infrastructure. See what I'm saying? So we have to be careful when we say, oh, we're going to buy into black businesses, because these owner operation people are self-centered, if you will. You see what I'm saying? They're not thinking about the bigger picture. And Amos is a psychologist who is going into a deep place of thought. So we have to say, okay, if he's giving us the census, what exactly is he saying here? What we need to do? Because this is raw material. This is, I mean, we as African people have not yet to tap into no resource whatsoever since the last, what, maybe 200-300 years, you know, not to throw away the rest of the history, but we're just looking at the experience here in America and whatnot. So here is this resource that we have to teach our people how we got to come together to create what now you're calling a black business. You cannot have a black business and not having a black collective. That's craziness. That's what I'm saying? All right. So that's where we gotta find out. If I'm going to bank with you, I'm going to do some time of business with you. I want to check you out. I want to check, just like if I'm going to the doctor, I want to see your mortality rate. What's going on with you? Yeah, how much people you done kill? How much people do you really care for your patient? If I turn up, within a couple of months' time, you gonna remember me, or Mr. Slash, or are you gonna remember me? Or you just want to see, I come in with that good insurance. You know what I'm talking about? Right. So we have to be careful and try to do that background check and say, okay, we see where this business is going. It's going into a good direction. It's, going to liberate us as a people if we all, move into this organization.
Absolutely. So I think I can say two things, brother. You're saying that it's not even just good enough to support black-owned, but
right.
Support conscious black business.
Yes.
Black business.
Yes.
You understand the vision. You understand
yes.
the entire picture, the benefit of the community. Not yes. people who are not business owners who have an individualistic mindset.
Right. Absolutely.
I heard you say, and the second thing you're saying is that we also need to. And then those conscious businesses need to be supported by the collective.
Absolutely.
I hear you, brother. I hear you loud and clear.
Yes, absolutely. So we have to be careful. And at the same time, when we're reading these books, we have to explain the consensus. There's a study that was already done, and it was explaining in the book that make no mistake. Don't make this mistake. You see what I'm saying? Because this is what the book is trying to explain, the consensus. And don't get emotional and get caught up with, because the consensus is there. It speaks volume. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So look at the bottom of 662. he goes on to say, it says, even when required by U.S. law to lend, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of page 662. He says, even when required by law to lend in all areas from which they accept deposits, white-owned banks generally have steadfastly and stubbornly refused to do so or have done so in a begrudging, miserly manner, degrading to both themselves and their borrowers. To add insult to injury, after accepting deposits from inner city consumers and businesses and divesting in their communities, mainstream banks gradually reduced their services to them and gradually began disappearing from the scene altogether, right? So he said this, and I gotta admit, y'all, I gotta be honest with you guys. I was one of these people that he's talking about in this next paragraph, okay? He says, on the face of it, many people will perhaps be tempted to feel that the withdrawal of mainstream financial services and institutions is justifiable in terms of high loan default rates and the unprofitable prospects which characterize inner city communities, especially Black areas. I was one of those folks, Sister Lima. I said, well, maybe, you know, people aren't really depositing money. Maybe people are defaulting on loans, you know, because I just, you know, because of the economic plight usually in the inner city. So I was one of those folks. He said, however, he says such a feeling is quite likely based on 3 stereotypic racial myths.
Say it out.
He says, first myth, that low-income borrowers are inherently credit risky. 2, that the defaults or mortgages of low-income homeowners are significantly higher than those of low-income borrowers. And 3, that doing business in inner city areas is not profitable or capable of profitable expansion. All right. So I was one of those folks, Sister Lima. I said, wait a minute, maybe they're moving out because, you know, things are going on in the city. But he's saying that, you know, those feelings are based on stereotypical racial myths. Right. And then he gives us an example. He quotes someone named Maud Hurd, the national president of the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. It says, intimates that available data from private mortgage insurance companies suggest that low-income homeowners, I'm going to say this, low-income homeowners are far less likely to default on mortgages than high-income borrowers. I'm going to say that again. So the data that was provided from private mortgage insurance companies suggests that low-income homeowners are far less likely to default on mortgages than high-income borrowers. And so, Sister Lima, we would think that it will be the other way around, right? Because you have more capital to spend because you make more money. But I guess the more money you make, sometimes, you know, the more in debt you go. So then you don't have enough money to pay your bills. And so he that, you know, so anyway, it's not the other way around. It says the experience of, I don't even know how to pronounce this word. I might say Atasis, American Savings, a large California thrift, and aggressively pursuing business in minority areas by opening branches there speaks directly to this point. All right, it says that they came up with something called the Community Reinvestment Act, 1977. Sis, I never heard of it. Like when I read this was the first time I heard of the Community Reinvestment Act. And Dr. Amos Wilson goes on later to explain exactly what the Community Reinvestment Act is. Says that the Community Reinvestment Act generally requires banks to lend in the communities that they serve. It says once each bank has designated its service area, it is required to approve loans without bias and to seek new customers from all races and incomes. The purpose of the CRA again, that's the acronym for Community Reinvestment Act. So it says that the purpose of the CRA includes guaranteeing that Blacks have access to loans and banking service equal to that of whites. All right, so that is the whole purpose of the CRA of 1977. It says that that this particular bank, American Savings, it says between 1989 and 1992, the American Savings Bank had granted $145 million of mortgages to California Blacks. In 1993, the Savings Bank made 3 times as many home purchase loans as Bank of America, which has 11 times its assets and immensely more marketing power. All right, so it goes on to say, corroborating the comments of Maud Hurd cited above, American Savings Bank has discovered that, contrary to the common myth, Blacks do not have a higher delinquency rate than do whites. It says, in fact, according to the Wall Street Journal, which was published in 1994, America's lending approach to inner city neighborhoods has been solidly profitable, with an average 5-year return on assets exceeding 1% and a delinquency rate in low-income areas that is 1/4 that of affluent towns such as Santa Monica. So that was very, powerful, very profound to me, an eye opener, actually. So moving on, it says, ignored in the 80s, it says that the Clinton administration has demonstrated an intense interest in rectifying the most egregious practice of racist lending in the nation. Right? It says this is a refreshing change given the benign neglect of this problem during the Reagan administration. We got to remember this book was published in 1998, family, okay? All right, so he says ignored in the 80s. So in the 80s, it says that there was legislation passed in 1977 in response to concerns that banks were redlining around economically depressed areas, including poor neighborhoods, from credit. But the act was relatively ignored in the regulatory environment of the 1980s, okay? Then in 1989, as a part of the thrift industry bailout, mortgage lenders were required to publicly report. Now, this is very important, family, because this is when, people were able to collect quantitative data to substantiate racial redlining, okay? So anyway, he says that in 1989, as part of the thrift industry bailout, mortgage lenders were required to publicly report home loans according to borrowers' income, race, and location. At last, community groups had the ammunition they needed, statistical evidence that Black and Hispanic mortgage applicants, regardless of income, are more likely to be turned down than white applicants. All right. So, but on the flip side of this, it says that banks aren't required to provide data on their small business lending practices as they are with house loans. All right. So then it says failed amendment. An effort to insert an amendment to the 1992 banking bill calling for banks to report their small business lending record was unsuccessful. Bankers denied they redline. Of course they are. They denied they redline and argued that the provision would have added intolerable paperwork. All right. So sis, I didn't know that. I didn't know that banks, and I don't know, maybe this has changed because this was 20 years ago. But according to this book, he's saying that, that banks aren't required to provide data on their small business lending practices as they are with housing loans. Maybe it changed, maybe it didn't. I don't know. You say you're looking it up, sis?
I said I'm not.
What'd you say, sis?
I said I'm not certain.
Yeah, I'm not either, sis. I'm not either, sis. All right, can someone take it from here? Page 65.
One of the brothers, Brother Impu, are you there? Are you there? Brother Impu? There he is.
What's up, Brother Impu? Peace, brother.
Oh, you got us on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, he just unmuted his mic, and then we couldn't hear him. Unmute it again, brother. Still can't hear you. You want to go out and come back in?
Yeah, I think he said he is. Brother Chaos.
Hold on.
65. Top of page 65, brother.
Yes. Using a Community Reinvestment Act.
All right, hold on. What page again? One more time. I got a different version of the book. The Age of Obama. What page? 665.
5.
And what's the title?
We have a different version of the book. Just start at the section that says using the Community Reinvestment Act.
Okay, let me find that. I'm on the page, but see if we can find it. Come on, my read glasses.
I'm like the same.
You guys been? Oh shit! All right.
Not even prepared for that.
All right. Damn. Let me get light.
Oh, you want this light?
Yeah, light. Let me get light.
Mine is kind of like
I got to find this. I want to stagnate this thing.
Okay.
665, and then it said, we must not construct these figures. I don't know if that's the one. Nope. Oh, I'm way beyond that. Lace, you go ahead because this is a different version of the book. I'm not gonna
Y'all gotta follow along, man, because me and Sister Alina, boy, goodness, we need a break sometimes.
That's what I'm saying.
I know.
Yeah, like y'all
I
gotta.
don't want to feel like are we just talking the whole time or we just talking to each other. So, you know.
Yeah, because this book is different. This version of the book is different from it.
Okay. All right. Well, 665. Despite the difficulties just described, we still recommend that organized groups within the African American community take advantage of the Community Reinvestment Act to discover a bank's lending practices towards its residential and business clients, and to bring pressure on banks to substantially increase their lending commitments to inner city business and entrepreneurs. Moreover, these institutions should provide or fund support services to fledgling businesses by providing training, timely information, and expert advice. Additionally, the African American community should back banking laws and regulations which would permit the establishment of Black-controlled bank finance community development corporations, especially through pre-existing and new Black-owned banks, in lieu of direct loans by mainstream banks as required by current CRA regulations. Laws and regulations which permit bank consortiums presided over by Black-owned banks, and financial institutions to provide small business loans ranging in amounts from $50,000 to $300,000 or more should be vigorously pursued by the community. Those white-owned banks participating in such a consortium may receive credits in favor of their community reinvestment rates for doing so. However, the basis for making loans to Black-owned businesses by community development banks, programs, and consortiums must be realistically pegged to the economic history and reality of the Black community. At the bottom, when all is said and done, the most effective measure for securing financial capital for Black-owned banks and Black American residents is the wholesale depositing to whatever degree possible of monies in Black-owned banks and financial institutions controlled by Blacks themselves.
That's right.
Coming from white government agencies, secondarily, where no such banks exist or are too inconveniently located. The concentration of Black consumer and institutional deposits in 2 or 3 white-owned banks and the willingness of Black clients to withdraw those deposits wholesale in defense of their economic interests should permit them to influence policies of those banks. Where the Black community has very substantial deposits and holdings in white-owned banks, they should demand that aggressive, committed members of the community sit on bank boards and lending committees, watchdog committees as ways of seeing to it that the community receive full return on its deposits. This is what you were saying earlier, Queen. And dealings with white-owned banking and financial institutions should be installed and maintained on active duty. So what they're saying is what Dr. Maat was saying. We need to put our money in the Black-owned banks, invest with Black-owned banks and Black-owned businesses, and demand these businesses that are making money off of us to therefore invest in their community. Give and take. Give and take. It's simple. This is what white communities do and Asian communities do, and this is how they build little Koreas and little Chinas and little things like that. It's real simple to do, family. We can do it.
Absolutely, sis. Absolutely. We just think that, I think that, you know what I think, Sister Lima, when I was reading this, a lot of, I like just understanding banking institutions should be a class. Mm-hmm. You dig what I'm saying? I think that people don't understand what a banking system is and how to utilize a banking system.
That's right.
You know, in the economic interest of Black people. So I don't think that people really understand what a banking system is and how to use it to benefit our communities. So we go and we say, oh, you know, we take our children to open up savings accounts and checking accounts and things of that nature, but we don't teach our children, or we don't know that not only do we deposit our money in these banking institutions, that, you know, we should also expect a return. Nobody respects a return from the bank. Nobody. I've never been, you know, people go, they open they open checking accounts, they open savings accounts, but you've never heard a Black person say, well, I'm going to, you know, bank with this bank and I expect them to do this for the Black community. You get what I'm saying, sis? I don't think we really understand. I don't think we have an understanding of the banking system. And we need to, just like with all of these different laws. You know, I'm reading throughout the book. So you had the community, and I had them underlined. The first law that Dr. Amos Wilson, the first act that he mentioned was the Community Reinvestment Act. All right. Then he also mentioned something else. Okay, the 1989 Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. On another page, he mentions the Fair Housing Act. You know, so these things, I mean, this is stuff that we should know, sis. A lot of us, and I got to admit, you know, I'm not, you know, an advocate of the Moors and all of that. But one thing I can say is that they always talk about understanding the law and knowing the law. And a lot of us, sis, we don't know the laws.
I agree.
We don't have a clue. But anyway, I think you finished at the bottom of page, what, 666?
Yes, sis. Well, right now we're at CRA and beyond. Okay,
cool. So I had already read this section, you know, the first couple of sentences when I was describing what the Community Reinvestment Act is.
Right.
I read that entire section up to page 669, but I do want to get into this box right here, box 25-1, a note of caution concerning borrowing from mainstream institutions. I'm not going to read the entire box, but Dr. Amos Wilson tells us, he says that while we rightfully expect that as American citizens, as African-American consumers and business persons, we should have equal access to consumer and business loans from mainstream white-owned banks and financial institutions, as do other ethnic groups. He said we must be very prudent in our use of these non-community owned resource markets. If we perceive the African-American community as a nation within a nation, it will become apparent that borrowing money from the financial institutions of the white nation or from institutions of other non-Black nations will indebt the African-American nation to those nations. So in other words, the more the African-American nation borrows from other nations, the higher and more burdensome its foreign debt, the more it will become a debtor nation. And since I thought about this, when I read this, I thought about a lot of those African countries that are indebted to like European powers because of a lot of the borrowing. Mm-hmm. All right. So at the bottom, it says that this is one of the major reasons that African-American community should demand reparations, not loans, no matter how generous. Okay. It says if its debts to outside nations and their institutions rise beyond certain critical levels, the Black community will be forced to expend the greater part, perhaps virtually all of its income servicing the debts that it owes in other communities and buying their imported products. I thought about Haiti. Again, I thought about Haiti. I thought about a lot of these other, what they call third world countries when I was reading this. But he says that perhaps virtually all of its income servicing the debts to it, servicing the debt it owes to the other communities and the buying of their imported products. It says all of its real estate, productive human and non-human resources will be owned and controlled by outsiders. All of its social institutions will be dependent on outside support and stripped of their positive cultural value and functionality. The African-American nation would then be a dependent, underdeveloped nation with all of the problems associated with nations of such status. Sis, I so thought about the book by, hold on, when as soon as I say it, you're gonna say, oh my goodness, I'm looking at it. The book by Brother Rodney, How You're Underdeveloped Africa. I thought about that book when I read this. It says, thus, while it is obvious that we must borrow from outsiders, such borrowing should be kept to the barest minimum, and that which we borrow should be invested as much as possible in wealth-producing projects. It is imperative that when feasible, monies needed for community growth and development should be obtained from institutions which are community-owned and controlled. This will maximize the circulation of wealth and money for longer periods of time within the community, thereby enriching and empowering it. All right, now at the bottom, he shows a diagram called, it says the maximization of Black resources. But Sister Alima, in my copy, it looks like Chinese writing. I don't know what it looks like on your end, but it looked like a bunch of scribble in Chinese writing. I'm going to look on my other copy, my hardback copy, to see if it looks like a bunch of scribble, sis, at the bottom. At the bottom of page 668, you see that diagram?
I see the diagram.
How does yours look? Wow. Sis, look at mine. Look, in my hardback copy of the book, it's clear, right? Clear diagram. Look, but in this particular paperback version of it, look at this, sis. I don't know what happened. You see it?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a different language.
It looks like a totally different language, sis. I don't know what it is, but so maybe you could describe the diagram, sis. I'm gonna put this one back.
This diagram here, family, on 668. Okay, it's maximization of Black resources. So it's like in the center here, they got households and businesses. So on the businesses side, they've got household distribution, manufacturing, professional services, construction, development, and real estate. It goes down to products and markets, commodities, retail, exchange of money, goods, and services. That goes up to households, which is consumers, human and non-human capital resources. Land, labor, and capital goes into resource markets, which is banks, credit unions, investments, SUSU, family, social, and then back down to resources. So Baba is showing us in this circle, he's showing us that how money flows. It's a money flow chart, basically, is what it is. And he's showing the maximization of Black resources, which is this is the way that we can do it. This is the way in that which we can facilitate it and to keep the money flowing, to keep the money coming back, basically. We have our businesses, we have our products, our households to take care of our households. We go to our resources, back to the businesses, our resources, of course, the banks, the credit unions, and all that. It's all a circle. That's what it is. That's what Baba is showing us here.
Wow. Sis, I'm telling you, this is really
of output in the community, constant with our discussion. Exactly. It will maximize the circulation of wealth and the money for longer periods of time within the community. That's what Baba's showing us. How to keep it going. How to keep it. That's a simple chart too. We need to print this shit out and pass it out. Like, look at this. I mean, it's so simple and easy to figure out too. I mean, but that's
I'm gonna lock your window. Can you show it to us one more time?
That's what we need. We do. I'm gonna try to screenshot it and like put it in the chat or something.
Yes, maximization of Black resources. So he's showing you, golly, yes. Look at that. That's beautiful, sis. I mean, beautiful family. Are you looking at this? He's showing you how to maximize our resources. So you have the resource markets, your banks and all of that, right? And then you take that, you dump that into businesses.
That's right.
Then you take the revenue from that, you dump it into product markets, retail, commodity, exchange of money. Then you dump that into Black households, consumers, right? And then you take that and you dump that Black into the banks, family. It's simple. We just have to do it, sis.
Yes, Queen.
We just have to do it, my sister.
I agree.
Like you said, it can be done.
We can do it.
It can be done. And I know that Brother Knowledge Born, he always gets on me because I say, well, you know, he and I go back and forth. And I say the Jews are doing it, you know, the Asians are doing it. And he said, Dr. Maat, you know, we have a different history.
Advantage. That's right.
That's a different, you know, a different psychology than them. And he said, so we've been, you know, our experiences in America have been different. You know, our experiences on the planet have been different. So he was like, you can't keep comparing, you know, what the Jews and Asians are doing. You know, you can't compare us to them. But my thing is this, is I know that Black people, I know that we are creative. I know that we are intelligent. I know that we are, what's the word I'm looking for? Resilient. And I just know that we can do it, sis. You get what I'm saying?
I agree.
I'm not one for making excuses and saying, well, we can't do it because of this. I'm one for saying I believe in our people, and you know, and if other people can do it, we can do it we can do it better than them times 10. That's me. I just believe in the greatness of African people, you know. So hey, but anyway, so moving on, family, page 669. It says a new departure. A new departure. He's talking about Chevy Chase Federal Savings of Chevy Chase, Maryland. Okay, it says the bank, which was the object of the Justice Department settlement back then, they were found guilty by the Department of Justice for refusing to market themselves in minority neighborhoods. Okay, that's what he's talking about here. And it says that the Justice Department construed such laws as the Fair Housing Act. See, the things that we need to These are things we need to learn, family. I mean, I've heard of these things. I definitely heard of the Fair.
We need to look at that more. You're right.
Yeah, and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. I heard of these things, but sis, I never looked into them. All right. So family, we definitely got to start looking into these laws. But anyway, so Chevy Chase was found guilty by the Justice Department of refusing to market itself in minority neighborhoods. It says the Justice Department construes such laws as the Fair Housing Act and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act as requiring banks to market themselves aggressively to minority customers by doing such things as opening branches in specific communities. Between 1976 and 1922, Chevy Chase made 97% of its loan in predominantly white areas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, damn, sis, they didn't even try to.
Not at all.
They didn't even try to, camouflage it, right? They just
do that. Ain't no need for y'all to even think. No.
Right. They just gave 97 of it, But anyway, so it says under the settlement, Chevy Chase with $5 billion in assets, whose suburban Maryland headquarters is about 2 miles from the District of Columbia line, agreed to make $140 million in concessionary loans available to people who might have suffered from the bank's redlining. 2, to set up new branches and mortgage offices in the excluded communities, including Anacostia, overwhelmingly Black neighborhood in the district. 3, spent $11 million to set up special loan programs to provide mortgages at either 1 percentage point below the prevailing market rate or at 1/2 point below the market rate, along with a grant equal to 2% of the loan to be applied to the down payment and a waiver of $400 in fees in the excluded neighborhoods. 4, modify its commission scale in a way which makes it more rewarding to its staff to make smaller loans. 5, place at least 960 column inches of advertising for 5 years in publications aimed at minority readers. All right. He goes on to say that the Justice Department's investigation was triggered by a series of articles which appeared in the Washington Post in the mid-1993 about racial disparities in the number of mortgage loans. Chevy Chase and its subsidiary BF Saul Mortgage Company were among the banks revealed to have engaged in biased lending. All right. So then he ends this section with saying, he said, we included the Chevy Chase scenario in order to demonstrate the broadness of spread of the Community Reinvestment, Fair Housing and Equal Credit Opportunity Acts, and how they may be used to curb racial bias in bank lending, credit, and services. The Chevy Chase case indicates that investigative knowledge of the lending practices of banks can be used under various government laws to help satisfy the need of the Black community for credit, financial support, and other banking services. Mm-hmm. While maximum use of such knowledge and laws should be undertaken by relevant community organizations, we believe that the forced location of white-owned banking outlets in Black neighborhoods may, in the long run, be self-defeating. We think that long-term and economic interests of the Black community would be better served by the establishment of Black-owned banking outlets in Black neighborhoods. A creative use of the laws to achieve this end would mutually benefit the Black and white banking communities, with the main beneficiary being the Black community. All right, next section, y'all, and we got 5 more pages to cover. So hang tight, family, hang tight. 5 more pages. It says bank and supplier assistant buyouts. All right, so he's going on to say, he says, in addition to reactively responding to the pressure of federal and state mandates, pressure by civil rights and community organizations, by more actively searching for minority suppliers and vendors, and by establishing large-scale minority supplier programs, large corporations are increasingly beginning to recognize that doing businesses with minority-owned companies provide them greater access to promising groups of minority consumers. All right. Says that the African-American community, by keeping its eyes on the prize, by maintaining its vigilance and activism in the areas of corporate finance and corporate supplier relations, can greatly advance its economic developmental agenda. He says, what can be accomplished is recorded throughout this volume. However, we shall briefly review 2 cases which illustrate the good things that can happen in the community when big corporations and financial institutions respond to the call of Black entrepreneurs, not only without prejudice, but with enthusiasm. Go ahead, Sister Alima, take it from there, sis. Bring us home, sis.
All right, where are we?
We're at Ford Motors and
active transportation.
yeah, that's right.
Okay, I really didn't have nothing on this page at all. Okay, so basically what's going on in this section here, this little section I had was in a move that will make active transportation the biggest black-owned trucking company and one of the largest black-owned businesses. Charlie Johnson acquired Jupiter Transportation System of Kenosha, Wisconsin, a trucking unit of Jupiter Industries Chicago for $45 million in debt and equity. So this is what this section is talking about. It's talking about Charlie Johnson. In 1981, Charlie Johnson's original company, the Johnson Houston, was asked to become Ford Motors' first minority contractor to ship cars from its assembly line to dealers. Johnson chose Jupiter Transportation, a Chicago hauler, as its more experienced partner. Jupiter, which had lost its contract with now defunct American owners, brought to the joint venture it formed with Johnson Houston, now renamed Active Transportation. Active Ford rose over the next 8 years. By 93, Active employed more than 300 people and earned $15 million in revenues.
Wow.
Crazy.
So the point of him bringing up this example, sis, was basically just to demonstrate what we could do with the backing of corporations.
Big corps, exactly.
And so he used, what's the guy's name? Charlie Johnson as an example.
Mm-hmm. Okay, family. On page 672, middle of the page, starts talking about Harriet Michael is the president of the National Minority Supplier Development Council, a New York organization that specializes in helping to create business contacts between corporations and minority-owned businesses. Contends that Active's acquisition of Jupiter, he said, is a vivid example of how relationships between big U.S. corporations and their minority suppliers are creating bigger and more viable minority businesses. We contend that past, current, and future mainstream corporate minority business relationships of the type represented by Active's acquisition are and will be the outcome of organized political and consumer movements, as well as institutional activism within the African American community relative to mainstream corporations. The most fundamental relationship is not that between corporations and minority suppliers, but the relationship between the Black community and the corporations and the American power structure as a whole. It is the active relationship that it is motivating large corporations to establish large-scale minority supplier programs. Then Wall Street Journal goes on to talk about the automakers. It says that the automakers have been among the first to establish formal large-scale minority supplier programs. Just piggybacking off of Active and saying that there are also other companies as well as AT&T Corporation and other phone companies have worked aggressively with minority suppliers. And that's all I had on 673, Queen.
All right. Anything on 674? Oh, you stopped at the top of 673, sis? Because I'm always.
He's just giving another example. He's talking about Wesley Radcliffe. He's talking about the wealth of the mail from the civic boosters in the South, the Middle East, suggesting elsewhere that he moved his company out of Brooklyn. Because he started his company in Brooklyn, people were saying that he should move it, but he decided to keep it there. And he had started off with like 260 people. Towards like the end of the company, they ended up having like 400 people working. Here's an IT firm. This was in Brooklyn Family, the ATS, and he was also talking about how IBM ended up having to close. So this is a corporation that he bought from IBM, and people tried to get him, to leave, but he decided to stay, and they became very popular. So they started off with 260. They ended up with 400 something people, but as IBM started to go down, their plant started to go down as well. But they're saying like they prospered during the 1980s, like I said. But then they just started to go down in the 90s, and employees went down to under 200 employees. And in 1983, IBM decided to close it down. So after 17 years of experience with IBM, Mr. Radcliffe and 15 of his managers from Brooklyn plant, they decided that they had what it takes to keep the plant open and operated. They said they offered IBM a deal. They would buy the faculty, pooling their money together. Radcliffe and his partners came up with $300,000 to offer IBM. The initial offer was supported by $2.8 million low-interest loan by the New York State Development Authority. The late Thomas Watson Jr., former chairman of IBM, offered to buy $1 million in non-voting stock should Radcliffe and his employee group prove successful in his buyout. Radcliffe closed the deal when he was able to obtain bank financing from Chase Manhattan to meet IBM's sale of $6.5 million. So it's just another example of how the Black community, how working with big corporations, how it can be a beneficial investment for both.
Absolutely. So Dr. Amos Wilson ends with, he says, the story of ATS. Hold up. ATS would be
180 workers. 180 former IBM workers chose to remain after
yeah.
completed, blah, blah, blah. So the story of ATS model presence for inner city industrial survival and prosperity should inspire the African American community to have great faith in its ability to transform its economic situation for the better through unified, planful, creative, African-centered consciousness, organization, and activism. We must keep in mind that while the example we gave of white corporate finance, Black business relations were exciting and exemplary of the positive path such relationships follow, they are very far from typical and frequent. They are not yet representative of a significant trend in white-Black economic relations. Even if they were to gain greater significance as we expect them to do, these relations must not slow our drive to develop the far larger and more important African-American pan-African economic system. Ultimately, Black-white business partnerships, joint ventures, and alliances must be adjunctly integrated into the pan-African economic system instead of being merely integrated into the pan-European economic system.
It's a fact.
That's a fact.
Yes, that's a fact. So family, next week we will be discussing chapter 26. We're getting down to the wire. This book has 31 chapters, I believe, sis. Am I correct?
Yes.
31 chapters. Next week, family, we will be discussing chapter 26. Black-owned banks, creators of wealth. So join us, family, back on this channel right here. You know what we had to do, sis? That's another thing we had to do. We had to set up a YouTube channel solely for the RAM Book Club. I mean, I'm of course continue to like stream it on, you know, my platform, but I think that the RAM Book Club should have a platform of its own. We definitely got to set that up. But we will be back, family, next week, to discuss chapter 26, Black-owned banks, the creators of wealth. You have any last words, family? Do you have any last words, Sister Alima?
Thank everybody for joining us. I appreciate you. Once again, if you have not been privy to Perceptions of Misplaced African, that is okay. You're a little behind, but you can get your copy now, family, of LilyLapoetespeaks.com. Hit me up. I will send you your copy. You can also get a digital download at Amazon.com, family, on your Kindle or your cell phone or whatever you like to read on. Check your girl out, family. Check your girl out. Also, check out some mail track. Go into Google, pop in mail track in there. Get your mail track. Get your mail track.
Yes.
You can get your DVD. We got it all. We got the coloring books, family. We got the storybook. Like, we got it popping. We got Aaron Knows About Africa. Check that out. Check out pantherwear.com. Get you some Panther sneakers. They popping, family. Like, we got so much going on. Get you some Tubman batteries while you're there so you can operate your device, so you can read your book. I mean, just get it in, family. Get it all.
Yeah, I mean, we got it. We can't just be talking about Blueprint for Black Power. We have to live it. We had to live it, Sister Alima.
That's right. My batteries coming. I got my toothbrushes coming. Come on, family. Let's do this. I'm showing mine up next week.
Sister, I'm showing mine next week.
I'm showing.
I'm like Energizer who?
That's right.
You know, door cell who?
I know that's
right. With Tubman.
I hope they got some C batteries because I need some right now.
Yeah, instead of Colgate, we got Core Oral.
That's right.
Instead of Tide and what's the other one, sis? Tide and Charmin.
Gain.
Yeah, you got Gain. Instead of that, we got True Laundry Detergent. As the sister said earlier, you can go right to WeBuyBlack.com and grab all of what you need. All right, so meet us back here, family, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We love you. Have a safe and productive week. All right, peace and power.
Peace and love, family.